Welcome Upper Two-Bar Road people, and I call it Upper Two-Bar Road because we're like where the power PG&E ends, so everything else above us is Upper Two-Bar Road, which is you, plus I think maybe 4 or 5 more families who are not here, representing some special people. John Heisey, wave to everybody right there. John Heisey is representing Jane and Ralph Heisey, who are on a road trip to Aspen, Colorado. Did they make it?
Not yet. They were in Utah this morning.
Okay. They're driving out for a wedding. Ralph's sister's getting married. So anyway, but Jane is one reason why we're all together. So hats off to Jane Heisey.
Yes,
Send her
Jane,
kudos.
our neighbor.
She keeps the master list.
Yes.
She has got the gift of organization and keeping faithful with the change of people, and she's just like, she's the glue for us on Tuber. So thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, John, for coming up. You're living in the city now, right, San Francisco?
Yes.
And are you down here feeding the cat? What are you doing?
Watering plants.
Oh yeah, wow.
Just relaxing, getting away from. I work from home, so it's hard to like get away from home without actually going somewhere. But it's nice to come here. I really miss. I grew up here. So I miss the nature.
John's the same age as our boys. If you don't know, this is my wife Terry. Terry and I live here, and Cougar Rock people, raise your hand and wave. Cougar Rock people, our newest Cougar Rock folks right here. This is Stephen and Bill Hall's place, and then the 80 acres that I joined. Claudia and Greg, right
We're the
there.
oldest Cougar Rock people.
Cougar Rock people. How many
Been there
years?
the longest.
36.
36. And then who else? Alan and son. How many years?
17 years.
That's right.
17.
Yeah.
We're the teenagers.
And you can see there's solar panels at the high point on the hill over there, but you can't see the house. But you
Well,
can
I
see,
just saw you
I
sit
can
at
see
the
the
doctor's
house.
house up there. That's the, I
you can see
believe.
the doctor at the Berggrens house.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the
that.
people we
Oh,
see.
My mistake.
Bergman's house up there.
Yeah.
I thought that was us because it's at the top of the
Farther
hill.
up Two-Bar Road, let's see, we'll start with Lawrence's family right here. And how many years on the road?
8 years.
8. And then Brian and his son Isaiah.
That's right. We're just the next road to the right, next to Clint's house.
Past Cougar Rock.
Yeah, just past Cougar Rock. Our new kids as of December of last year.
But not new to the valley.
Yeah,
Where do you
we
live?
live in Ben Lomond's. There's no house on the property, so we're just farming and camping here and there right now.
Nice.
And you have a good name for your property now. What is it?
Yeah, Blooming Echo Farms.
All right.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
I've been up on Brian's property, and if some of you might remember, there was a pot grow up that driveway, and it was just like a nuisance to everybody.
Yeah.
And he's going to restore it back to pristine condition. It is only going to take 10 or 20 years.
Forestry and tend to the land and do what she wants to help her grow and flourish and be blooming.
Yes.
Yeah.
So farther up Two-Bar, representing 25 years, Paul and Ava.
All right.
I think we know most everyone.
Can't see what we
And
got.
then a
here.
little farther up the road, right next to the Heiseys, are Eric and Joanne.
32 years.
32 years.
32 years.
And their son Robert, right back there, who grew up with John. Are you guys surprised to meet each other after all these years?
It's always a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, they were both went to Pacific Collegiate.
We
You
used,
know
we
our
used to carpool to high school together.
Yeah.
And then we went quite a few years without seeing each other, I think, until last year.
Yeah.
I
Earlier
noticed
this year.
our
It's been
kids
quite a
grow
long
up
time.
and move to big cities. I was just thinking about
But they come back here and they visit
Yeah.
us once in a while. Tara and I have 2 sons. One's in Portland, one's in San Diego.
Wow.
And we got 3 granddaughters.
Nice. Aww.
So we've been here in this house since '94. 95, bought it from John and Pat Holm, but I've been on the road since I was 5 years old. My folks moved here in 64, bought the ranch next door, 87 acres, and that's where I grew up. But when this came up for sale, we bought it, we stayed. One wintry winter, I couldn't do any work out there, so I went to the library. My dad had done a title search on the property, and I chased the owners of the ranch, the history. And so that's where this is all born out of. At the turn of the century, in Boulder Creek, we had something called the Mountain Echo, which is a newspaper, and great documentation of what happened in Boulder Creek during the years. Because the Santa Cruz Sentinel was published in Santa Cruz, and there was a paper called the Surf. But Boulder Creek was what was happening up in the canyons, and so that's where all my information comes out of. And I've got way more information than I care to share, so I'm going to just focus on Upper Two-Bar Road. And I'll just go through some brief stuff, and I can talk longer if you guys have more questions one-on-one. But the goal here today is to tease you with some interesting stuff,
Right by the table.
eat food, and enjoy each other's company.
Okay, I'll do that.
This is the earliest map I found. It predates 1871, and everything was surveyed into 160-acre parcels at that time, and the names of the owners are on here at that time. So those are the names that I chased, and some of them I found, some of them but I focused specifically on who owned our ranch at that time. This is a copy from the United States government. Giving permission in 1873, 160 acres to somebody named Thomas Wagstaff, and that's Stephen's property.
Oh.
Yeah, you're
Really?
really interested. So you're gonna sit out there.
Whoa.
Actually might need that.
You mean Cougar Rock was the
Anyway,
first resident here?
The U.S. Government said we got to survey this stuff out here, so they surveyed everything into 160 acre parcels. This one was given, that 160 acres was given as a I want to say a gift from the government for his military service.
Oh, wow.
And then the Wagstaff family, I've got a few photos. I didn't chase that name very far because that wasn't my primary interest, but I know there's a lot of stuff out there on the Wagstaff. Here's a birth certificate of a Wagstaff that was born on that. It could have been Surgeon Hawley's. I don't know where the property lines are, but that area
Bill
up in there.
says that we bought the property from Dwayne and Christine, and he originally had that property. So
Yes.
the 20 acres.
The parcels over the years have been chopped into smaller pieces.
Yeah, but that was all one property at one time.
Yeah, and so this was the original. So a few photos of that. There's some three big names back up in the canyon. It was the Wagstaff family there at the end of Two-Bar Road, which would include the De Laurentiis, the Fuels, you folks, and then everybody on the other side of the canyon, the Wessels, the Tune-ins. That parcel, 160 acres, has got a great story behind it, and is well documented by their ancestors. And that's where I'm gonna do some reading from, because it gives you a flavor of what was going on up there at the turn of the century. That was the Horseman family, and they, the daughter wrote extensively about growing up at the end of Two-Bar Road. Ironically, at that time, what year was it? It was the road, Two-Bar Road ended just about here till 1898. The road ended here, so anybody who wanted access past, this is the Morel Ranch back then, and he's got a great story too. But the road ended here, and the access to your houses and your parcels, all those parcels, was from Bear Creek.
Oh, wow.
And it's not the fire road that you guys all know about that takes you through the Tune-ins property. It's a road that goes through the Tunins property, or maybe Mark and Peggy's, that was in a different pops out of Bear Creek in a different spot, a little closer to town. And that's how they came in and out of their property, those properties, until 1898, when the county approved funds to push the road the rest of the way up Two-Bar Canyon. Basically, from Cougar Rock this direction, it's pretty easy road building. But from there on, you're blasting stumps, you're cutting walls. We had big washouts, and that's what they did back then.
Do you know how many miles it is from Bear Creek Road to where they used to come to here?
I'm trying to think of the name of the road. I want to say Star or something. It's a low spot before you get to Mustang Mesa. Anyway.
Was after Hopkins Gulch? I mean,
After Hopkins Gulch, it's before you start climbing.
oh,
Whalebone,
If
maybe?
you see a fire on Bear Creek, you get a little nervous looking at a map.
Yeah, it's not that far away.
Yeah.
But I'll read some of that stuff from those times. We'll backtrack a little bit. The origin of Two-Bar Road, the name, nobody knows.
Two-Bar Creek.
It's Claudia's right. The formal name of Two-Bar is called Two-Bar Creek Road. It's not called Two-Bar Road, but
did bar have different meanings back then?
and that's always the debate. Was there saloons at the end of Two-Bar Road?
No.
Not that we know of,
Yeah.
but I only have one guess, and it's just my theory, is a lot of the settlers came with the gold rush, came out of the Sierras. They got here, and they named it similar to what they would name up in the Sierras. If you go through the Sierras, there's a lot of roads, places up there with the name bar, sandbar, or gold bar, or whatever. And they got to Two-Bar Creek, and they said, well, there's 2 sandbars in the creek, so let's name it something like that. That's my guess.
I thought somebody went into a trance and they were predicting cell coverage.
Yeah, like 2 bars on LTE. I can verify right now.
There you go.
Is there any early maps that have it as Two-Bar Creek?
On this map, that one's 1870, and the Two-Bar Creek is on there now. Kings Creek is named after a guy named James King, and he got his name in there. I just want to talk through. This will help me explain the story. They came for the redwood trees, and on Two-Bar, just down in the creek on the other side of Two-Bar Creek from us, was a sawmill that ran for 18 years. This is a picture of it, and it ran from 1887 to 1905. And then it's when they took the picture, the steam's blowing out of the top, the logs are coming in one side, the lumber's coming out. They took everything out on wagons to the highway, or to Boulder Creek, to where the train was. The train showed up in 1884 to Boulder Creek. Finally made it up from Felton. There was a Flume from 74 to 84, and they floated it out, and then the train came, and then they could really get volume out then, because the Flume was really funky.
Did the train follow the road that's there now, or was it on trellises?
It's similar, but not the exact road. But they did lots of crossings across the creek. I tacked this one up because this is Two-Bar Creek, and it's a mule team loaded full of split stuff headed out of Two-Bar Canyon. And because a lot of the wood that came out of the woods was hand split. It'd be fence posts, it'd be shakes, roof shakes, it would be grape stakes. Because the logs are so big, it's hard to move it, so you just break it into smaller pieces. And old growth redwood, you can split it into beautiful, beautiful wood. So that's how a lot of the wood came out, was you pack it out and splitting it into smaller stuff. But there were the sawmills. I found 2 sawmills on Boulder Creek, one down in the Fern Drive, Redwood, Christian Park area. But this was the one that I focused on in the family because it was farther up the canyon. So that was the settling years and the logging years. And they logged up in this canyon till, well, the '06 earthquake, basically. By then they were done logging it. And then it went into kind of farming years. You've got all this big open land. The place has been burned over a couple times, open meadows, really good soil. And so the farmers moved in.
Now, before that, though, was it true that this was grizzly bear country?
There were grizzlies
Yeah.
back in the day. I couldn't tell you anything about,
Are there any pictures of? I heard like the bar had stuffed one downtown.
I don't know.
Wow.
The last grizzly was killed when?
1898
The grizzly
1898.
bear.
Before the
last
farmers,
black
yeah.
bear was
So the-
killed in.
in 1906.
yeah.
So there were bears back then, but they were hunted out. With the open land, as farming started, I'll just read you one. Next door, the big open meadows where I used to have the Christmas trees. It says the Mrs. Brad Morel dropped by today to show us some of the prunes from the Morel Ranch. It was a prune farm next door. They were very large in size and lacked nothing in flavor. They expect to dry 60 tons of prunes this year.
Wow.
So that was fun. Farther up the road, at the Horseman property, would be Gary and Shauna's place. There, 1898, they said Horseman has commenced cutting the brush of the right-of-way extension of Boulder Creek from the Morel Ranch to its headwaters on the creek. His new piece of road will be about 1.5 miles long and it'll cost about $1,500 to build. The county will pay somewhere between $500 and $1,000. And the owners of the interested owners must put up the balance to get the road through. It is much improved and will run through the lands of Morel, Cowell, Wagstaff, and Horsemen. So those are the big names that were back up in the canyon right at the turn of the century. I won't read this one, but this is a description of this ranch when it sold again in 1916. Ironically, there was a family from '06. When did they move here? Well, from 1917 to 1926. They came back to visit my family in the 80s sometime, and they left their memoirs. And it's all right here. She was, the girl was born at the ranch, so she writes all her stuff, all the photos, and everything was way cool.
Yeah. Was it a Christmas tree ranch back then?
No, it was still prunes.
Prunes, yeah.
It was a truck vegetable farm,
Oh.
and they did it for 9 years, and they got there. So there's some of their pictures.
That's right.
Oh, on the road building, this is June of 1889. It says, Supervisor Rambo has completed the building of 2-bar road extension through the Morel Ranch. We now learn that work is to be discontinued soon by the county authorities as public funds are running low and parties whose properties have been greatly benefited and have promised to help are not coming forward with expected assistance. So,
Gee, just like a road association.
we've always had trouble with our roads here, and clear back to the first time it was built.
Wow.
But that's what catches my fancy. For everybody up at the end of 2-bar road, the Horseman area, which would be the properties I mentioned, I chased his name through the Mountain Echo, and I'll just read some of the things that were happening up your area. This is 1901 in April. A horseman brought to this office some wild blackberries plucked from the bushes at his ranch in the thermal belt on 2-bar Creek. In the locality mentioned, vegetation is growing all winter as if it were springtime, and Mr. Horseman made everybody in this office envious by telling of various and sundry wild blackberry pies that have been served on the family board in this neck of the woods.
Thermal belt.
Yeah.
You guys got a banana belt up there. You can grow all
Yeah, we're
sorts
in
of
a
stuff.
compression zone.
Yeah.
Where's that? Where's the
What are you
banana belt?
talking about? How far?
Yeah. This is our gardener.
What'd you
know
call
what
it,
is.
Lawrence?
It's a compression zone, so when the cold air sinks, warm air rises, and as they come together, they squish, and when they squish air together, it warms it up. So in the winter time, they'll be 28 degrees down here, we'll be 35 up where we
It's
are.
true. I watched
Wow.
my thermostat in my car. It's like 18 degrees hotter at our house, and it goes down. All of a sudden, it's 10 degrees less. It's amazing.
Wow.
Wow.
So you're in the thermal zone, huh?
yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah, but you're in a gopher zone
I think
too.
there's
Yeah, they know where to live. They like it warm.
So,
Yeah, and that's a
so they
common
go for the winter.
temperature here.
You know,
I mean, we used to live downtown, and it was, in the wintertime, we were always 28.
sprinkle
it
cayenne
was-
pepper around your plants and then
Oh, yeah?
cinnamon. I don't know if you
Oh.
know that, but gophers hate the cinnamon.
You might try that.
So I haven't had a problem for 8
Yeah.
months. So that's what I did.
So a couple another reading, October, the Horsemen Ranch. It says on account of lack of facilities for hauling and shipping, Horseman is making grapes into wine at home. So he's got a vineyard up there. If you've ever been to Gary and Shauna's, there's still some of a pear orchard that's up there,
100 years old.
and they're
Year
still
old
producing
trees.
pears.
Yeah.
On November 30th, the same year, it says Horseman has rented a cottage north of town out for the winter because muddy winter roads ooze in every direction. So he's packed up out of the backwoods of Two-Bar because can you imagine our road not being
Paved.
We complain about the pavement now. Well, it was mud back then. There was no gravel, no nothing. So they had to move out. Another reading, and this has to do with the sawmills. This sawmill here was operating just across the creek from us, and it says the Maccabee brothers have changed their sawmill plans on Two-Bar Creek and will not be moving the sawmill to the Horsemen Ranch. Instead, the mill is going to be fitted up at the old site of the Morel Ranch, and timber will be trucked from Upper Two-Bar to the mill. The crew is repairing the mill. So, and this is 1904, and that's when the final logging was done up in your neighborhood. So if you see stumps out there, that was 1904 was the final pass through there.
Are there any old growth trees at all?
There's some big ones hiding in there.
Yeah.
Clydea's got some big ones, and they skip. If a tree was medium size, they might have skipped it. So now it's really big.
Yeah.
And there's
There are a few right up on Cougar Rock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dean have
If you
have
look,
one.
when you walk
Barnhills.
it, you'll see because they're burned, and then you realize, oh, they're pretty good girth.
Wow.
There's at least 2 I can think of, and there's 2 down right across the road from the horses.
Wow.
We've got some old growth stumps.
Yeah, one of them is
One
on
of
our
those.
property.
Where your well is?
Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought. We have just beyond the well, a little fairy grove there, right? Yeah.
I got at least a couple big ones on my property. I don't know how old they are, but they got burn marks and stuff.
Yeah.
They're huge.
Here's November 26th, though, for says the Horseman Ranch home at the headwaters of Two-Bar burned down from a candle left by his children in the bathroom. All was lost. There you go. March of 05, it says steel rails to be used for a tramway to the logging woods from the Morel timber mill up Two-Bar were hauled through town this week. So to get the logs from your property to this sawmill, they were flipping a coin. Do we move the sawmill up the creek or do we bring the logs down? And they decided to build a tramway and bring the logs down to the mill. And in this picture right here, it shows some rail tracks going into the mill. So I'm thinking that's the tramway that they built.
What's the difference between a tramway and a railroad?
It would be much smaller, narrow gauge, lightweight. Just something that a horse could pull
Right here.
on a track,
I
put a
see.
log on it.
Yeah. So 2 tracks though.
Two tracks. Yeah.
More like what you might see in a mine.
Pardon?
More like what you might see in a mine.
Uh huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
carts pulled by a horse
Yeah.
or mule.
Some more reading in April of '05. It says, despite rain and foggy weather, Two-Bar, Bear Creek have their orchards, vineyards, and gardens in great shape. And then also it says hay crops from Gibbs, Morel, Horsemen, and Locatelli ranches are showing evidence of great abundance. And then August, it says Horseman had a flag-raising bee at his ranch on Two-Bar Creek. A liberty pole 65 feet high was raised after being planted in the soil of Table Mountain. And that's what he called his ranch at the end of Gary and Shauna's was the heart of that. And then his property went out from there. They called it Table Mountain. 06, April 06, a horseman, 1.5-year-old daughter drowned in the creek near the ranch on Two-Bar last Saturday.
Was it deeper then?
Yeah. In 06, October of 06, a forest fire burns down the divide between Two-Bar and Bear Creek, burning in the Whalebone Gulch for 2 days. Horsemen on Table Mountain is safe. Fire reached the Wagstaff place, right there, Steve. It reached your place, where a crew of, and I didn't write this, where a crew of Japs lost fully $500 worth of wood. So there was a labor crew up on your property on sick in harvesting wood of some sort.
06, he said?
06, yeah.
That's 1906.
1906. Yeah. And then
I was there in 06. The last one. That is.
the last one I'll read about Horsemen is in 07, June of 07. Mr. Horseman, the king of Table Mountain and grower of the famous Table Mountain grapes, describes favorable growing conditions in the San Lorenzo Valley. And this was his article right here. Mr. Horseman is thankful and for all his travesties of farming up here. He was a really upbeat guy. His final home was downtown Boulder Creek. Then his daughter wrote the memoirs. He was the local sheriff in town and active community member.
Why do you say all his travesties?
Trying to farm up here.
Oh.
Some of the articles I didn't read is he had the property long enough that he was having to haul all his produce not up Two-Bar Road, but over the back into Bear Creek, which is a terrible way to get in and out of your property. And the other articles talk about I can't get my produce out because I can't get over the road. I'll read that one to you. It says Horseman. He's still farming in 14. Horseman began the work of getting his last year's wine vintage to the train cars, but it is a serious and expensive undertaking caused by the awful condition of the roads leading to his place, one being closed entirely and the other nearly impassable for the reason of wash and springs caused by the heavy winter rains. So it's been a really bad winter. Two-Bar Road's a train wreck. Yeah. His other way is up over, which is another train wreck. So he's got this produce he can't get to market. Mr. Horseman, like other mountain farmers, past and present, find farming exceedingly difficult, discouraging by reasons of bad roads, and they think seriously of giving up the fight. It certainly takes a Spartan to keep it up under such unfavorable conditions. So that was in 14. That was what was going on at the end of the road. The stories go on. I've got a photocopy of his daughter and her whole story of growing up at the end of Two-Bar Road. Forgive me, I forget which book I photocopied it out of it, but it's somewhere in the library.
You did a lot of research.
It was a really rainy winter.
Lots of in-tour time.
The Boulder Creek Library, I'm sure they don't allow this anymore. They had the Mountain Echo newspaper, the old stuff. Do you remember this, Afa?
Yeah.
It was on the scrolls, and you could sit with the original newspapers and read. All my research was done before
the new library.
Before the new library, before the everything online before the
Yeah.
computers. Mine was done in the 80s, late 80s, I think.
Wow.
And so you'd sit and go, I'm looking for Horseman, Morel, trying to read two-bar, just reading all those. It was fascinating to read that.
Yeah.
So they don't let you handle those papers anymore.
No,
But
for a good reason.
Yes, they should go into posterity, not into.
Yeah.
Are they accessible online now?
They may be.
Yes.
So word searchable?
Look up the Mountain Echo.
Yeah.
Here it is right here. And I forget what year this was, but that's the name of it. And fascinating reading. It's the best. That's a whole nother story in itself, of this newspaper, because he loved Boulder Creek, and he just wrote about it and promoted it and stuck with it. His newspaper's going under. He doesn't have the money to do it, and so he publishes his last, and correct me if I'm wrong, his last few newspapers on leaves from maple trees or something like that.
Catalpa.
What was it?
Catalpa leaves.
I don't even know what that is.
They're bigger than maple.
Bigger than maple leaves, okay. So
Because his subscribers weren't paying their
Yeah.
subscription.
Anyway, great. That's
It's been
great
like
story.
Association.
There's some of those up in the pizza place.
Okay.
The newspapers on these.
On leaves, yeah.
Pizza,
I'll have to
local pizza.
So that's the settling years. The farmers came. Horseman was one of them. Morel was one of them next door, because the logs were gone. This other family came, and their names were the Johnsons. They farmed for a little while. We went to the 30s, the 40s. Things start getting subdivided, making smaller parcels. By the time my dad bought our ranch next door in '64, it was down to 87 acres. And most other parcels were chopped up. Cougar Rock in the 70s went from a 160 acre parcel, maybe an 80 acre parcel, into 10s and 20s. And I think there's even a 5 up there somewhere. But
Well, we started off at 2.5.
oh, okay.
Right when Joe Kuchera, remember that name,
Mhm.
became before he became supervisor, they allowed them. They knew that they were going to zone minimum 10,
Right.
so they did a couple of splits, and also the parcel at the end of the road has 3 parcels that are less than 10. So they just squeaked in.
Yeah.
So we started with 2.5, and now we have 30.
Right.
But
You're
yeah.
putting bigger parcels back
But
together. I remember that my dad had that option with the ranch, 87 acres, and go, look at ranchettes. And I said, no, we're going to keep this thing as one big piece. Because
It's one parcel still.
It's one parcel. Well, there's 3, but it wasn't anything he did to it. That's the way it came to us.
So you grew up right here,
Yeah,
and
right
you
next
went
door.
to school around here.
Boulder Creek Elementary.
And then the town, did it have just probably not as many shops?
Just as many. Yeah, downtown hasn't changed,
Yeah.
really.
You,
It's all
you know
about
why
the same.
PG&E stopped at your place?
The road stopped. That's what you said.
Well, the PG&E didn't go in until like the 1940s or 50s. I don't have the guess on it. Maybe the 30s. It had to do with landowners. I don't know the story. No. The last thing I just want to, and then we all answer questions or just eat more food with you guys. Everybody's always curious. Well, to mention my family's era, we were here. Dad bought in '64. Mom was brave. She had 4 elementary school kids. Moved from the suburbs of San Jose. Dad took the only car they had back to San Jose to work. She was stuck with a 48 Studebaker pickup truck that came with the ranch, 3 on the tree and no gas gauge. And haul us all off to school and do that stuff. But that was, we were here, my folks, Dad passed in '06 and he in 13. And at that point it was time to settle the estate and let it go. But wonderful history on our family, and Greg's got the book back there. When we were open to the public, we did Christmas trees, pumpkins, and school groups, and we rocked.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
It was super awesome.
I still run into customers and they weep.
I know.
Yeah.
It got
missed
that.
it.
That's
Happy
why I love
memories.
the fall. The kids always had field trips
Yeah.
to get a pumpkin, and it
So-
just got you in the mood.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
came as a student.
Yeah.
on one of those field trips. I actually found a VHS tape recently with some footage of my visit to the farm here.
Oh
my
And
God.
your mom and dad running the camera.
No, it was done by it was like a kindergarten class. I think someone in the class, like one of the teachers or assistants, did it. So I don't know.
Yeah, that was a sweet time. The farm was let go in 13. Bill Watkins owns the ranch now, and he's renovating it. He'd be here, except he got stuck in Seattle seeing his daughter, because SeaTac is all backed up with all their flights right now, and so he's not home yet, I don't think.
Aw.
But he's restoring the place. It's like a nature preserve over there now, and so we really enjoy it. There's one more map here. It was when my ranch was there, and it's interesting on that map. You guys there on Cougar Rock have seen all the subdividing stuff. It's there. And my last picture down the road, Mrs. Elmer. She's sitting in the rain with her umbrella. She was down at the Vandersteen's place, where their new house is. Well, she used to live down there, and she fed their dogs really good treats, and we lost a couple of our dogs to her because the dogs wouldn't come home because her treats were so good. But
They liked
anyway,
her better.
1970 something, she's out in the rain. She's on a little bench. She's got a skirt, umbrella. She's got that little sack over her head that the ladies used to wear for their hair, and she's got a rifle. And at that point, there were dogs running. Neighbor dogs in packs, and they were killing deer. And she, darn if they're going to kill the deer. So she's out there. They rallied some of the other ladies to sit around, wait for the dogs to come through and shoot those dogs. So that's one of my favorite pictures, and that was in the Valley Press.
Dog party.
Wow.
So that's enough trivia. As a welcome to Bill, we put together a history of the ranch, and it's all this stuff into a book. It's from 1870 to 1900.
Oh, maybe
All
we
right.
would like one too.
So this should probably go into the library or the
Yeah.
historic museum. For guys who like wood, this is Big Creek lumber prices from 1980. But what's really cool about it is Big Creek is big proponents of good forest care.
Yeah.
And they put in, oh look, here's a story about grizzly bear.
Wow.
They put in all sorts of history vignettes in their old stuff. Great read. We were hoping Lisa Robinson would be here today. She's a curator for this is her book.
Yeah, she couldn't find a docent to take over.
That's okay. We'll meet her some other time. She also did a really nice book on the Flume.
Yeah.
And then I grabbed this, I don't know where, this is the story of Redwood Christian Park down the road.
Oh, wow.
It reads a little bit like a church hymnal,
Huh.
but it's got some interesting stuff in it.
Like building
Which
the ark?
Redwood Christian Park down the
yeah,
road.
yeah.
It's a Methodist
Yeah, yeah.
campground,
Yeah.
and it's how they bought it. So,
Yeah, they built like a copy of the ark there.
yeah, they do. It's a little replica. It's way cool.
Yeah.
So that's, last topic, fires. In my readings about Horsemen, I read you that one fire in 06, but I documented two other fires. One was in 1898. It's called the Maitland Fire. And August 20th, the fire starts in a Chinaman's cabin at about 11 o'clock on one of the hottest days of the season with a strong wind blowing. The fire is checked on the Hopkins Ranch, Hopkins Gulch. So that's where it starts. With a close call for the Hopkins home, the fire moves northward towards the Morel land. So it's coming over the ridge from Bear Creek. The Morel's sawmill, barn, and outbuildings are saved. We still have the original barn next door. Fire moves through the properties of Cowell, Wagstaff, and then it goes into Kings Creek, threatening would belong to other people. Then it lists out all the things that were lost. It says, and here's a 2-bar road thing again. The fire burned the new cribbings. Remember when was it extended? 1898. It says the fire burned new cribbings and the log work to hold the dirt along the new section of 2-bar road, making the road to Horseman temporarily impassable again. So they just got it finished. Then the fire comes through and burns out all the wood cribbings.
It's
So
supports for the.
that's one fire. The other fire was that I documented that I know about. There might be some others, but this was in the readings of the Mountain Echo. Was in November 29th, 1919, which is Thanksgiving weekend. The fire starts in an old barn at the Wallace place on Kings Creek. Kings Creek is over there.
Yeah.
The wind pushes it south over the ridge into Two-Bar Creek. The barn and a warehouse is lost at the old Morel place. So there were 2 barns were lost here. The fire goes down the canyon and burns the home of Gibbs and barn and a lady named Fanny Welch. Then it burns towards Bear Creek and over towards Middleton Road, where you know that is. The fire comes within 1 mile of Boulder Creek, and with backfires being lit, it halts its advance.
That was 1919.
1919.
So when we were putting that other book together, we realized that the 1918 Spanish flu had happened the year before, which almost mirrored our pandemic and our fire.
Yeah.
One right after another. 100
Wow.
plus years later.
Yeah.
But that was
The Cowles own property all through the mountains.
And the 40 acres that we're chunked from was actually purchased by a realtor named Finberg, whom I went to high school with his son. So we're reading Finberg. I was Stanley Finberg. What? So like I didn't know he was a real estate wheeler and dealer, but when we were reading the papers for buying the property, really? So then he's the one responsible for slicing the 40 acres into the 210s and the 20.
Yeah, and Cougar Rock, the birth of Cougar Rock.
Yeah, probably.
Any other questions?
Which was Hall Road when we moved in. It wasn't even Cougar Rock.
So
It was Cougar Hollow?
It was Hall Road.
Hall Road, oh, for Bill Hall.
It had no name.
Yeah.
Oh, it had no
We had
name.
a 2-bar address when we moved in.
when did Cougar Rock come in as a name?
When the 6th building permit was issued, the county made us.
You gotta have a name
pick
for
a
your
name.
road.
You picked it?
Yeah, we all, Chris and Bill and us, and got together and John, when John was here, John Fonseca,
Oh, wow.
we said, well, what about Cougar Rock? And so we named it Cougar Rock.
What was it? Did it have a name before that? Or
It was,
Hall Road.
it was
just Hall Road?
Hall Road, because Bill was the first person up there.
Oh.
But well, the first person among us, obviously
Yeah.
there was people up there in the
Yeah.
past, but we all had all our mailboxes down there. We had 2-bar mailing addresses.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
This is why our addresses are so funny, because we should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Cougar Rock Road, right? But we're 17151 because we were on 2-bar 4.
Yeah, right.
Okay, one more question, then we're gonna break up this party and eat some more
I have
food.
a question.
I'll have Ava and then we'll do, since we got 2, we got 2. Okay.
Yeah, so when your dad lived there, there was an orchard. When did that orchard get started?
With the Morel family back in the
Oh,
1890s.
I'm sorry. I guess I missed
This
that.
was, the Morels were planting a prune orchard in 1896.
There were apple orchards, weren't they?
It was more than just prunes. It was prunes,
Yeah.
apples, pears.
So did they start it for feeding the gold country, the miners?
Well, they would ship it out and it
Yeah.
would be sold at market wherever the market was.
Okay. And it's
Yeah.
really cool that Bill Watkins, I think is his
Uh-huh.
name, that he's trying to restart it.
Yeah.
And there was a packing place underneath the house, right, for the apples?
Yeah, the original house next door was actually a packing shed. Half of it was living quarters, and then half of it was a packing shed, and then the basement was dirt floor, no windows. It was like a cooling storage. That was the original house that Morel built.
Okay.
One more question, then more food.
Yeah, I was just curious if there were any traces of the indigenous people before this that has ever been tracked up and down the 2-bar.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I heard they mostly were along the coast. This was more bear country up here.
Yeah, they came up for hunting, I think, and
Yeah.
didn't really
dig back
settle
here.
up in here.
Yeah.
And that's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
a hunting ground, but not a living ground.
Right.
A little too harsh. Why are we here? Sometimes you go, why don't I live in Santa Cruz?
Why not?
It's too hot here. It's too wet. Well, thanks for getting together. Stay as long as you guys can. I'll sit around here, answer any questions you have, and
Thank you, Rob.
get to know.
Thank you, Rob. Awesome.
Thanks for putting that together.
Yeah, well, we're all on the road
And
together.
Terry, too.
An old timer advice: drive slower, wave more.
Yeah.
Oh, and the last thing is, if you see a plugged culvert, unplug it. Because we are like, if it plugs,
We're
there
all
goes the
stuck.
road.
Yeah.
And if we just take
We're
the
all
time
up
to
a creek.
if we're all up a creek or stuck up here.
You are one of us.